We live. Our guest, wherever you're watching us all over the world, welcome to this special edition of the Batwetu TV. Uh, with me is my co-guest, my guest, Mr. Nason Bimbe. Mr. Nason Bimbe, welcome to Batwetu TV.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chilufya, and thank you very much to for those who are listening in. Thank you for inviting me to this special program.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bimbe. I'll come back to you. For our viewers, today we in our show we're taking advantage of the digital economy in a country like Zambia. If you remember, on the 3rd of October 2022, we looked at the need for acceleration of digital transformation within the government of Republic of Zambia and the wider society. So just a preamble, in that discussion, we used the World Bank report of April 2022 as a basis, using three key themes the report identified as critical, and these are closing the global digital divide. Even though new technology are spreading rapidly around the world, an estimated 37% of the population, which is 2.9 uh, billion people, have still never used internet. Preparation for the jobs of tomorrow. That's the second point. Innovation is radically changing the nature of work. New jobs are emerging, others are evolving. To compete in the digital countries will need to prioritize education and build the digital skills of their workforce. In other words, they need to invest in people. Point number three, developing secure, reliable digital systems. As the world is going digital, strengthening capacity in areas like cybersecurity, data protection has become more important than ever. While we recognize the work that has gone in putting some of the citizen facing services online and listed through the Zambian government service bus, which is GSB, which is very commendable. However, we note that these services are not well known. An assumption based on anecdotal evidence, as we are not privy to the metrics on usage. But this evening, we are going to talk about a topic, the theme entitled, Is there a need for a chief technology officer and chief information officer roles within GRZ? Um, with me is Mr. Nason Bimbe, who is a digital ICT and digital knowledge specialist. But then, just some few notes before we get into that. It's advisable that digitally enabled transformation must have the following three broad components: transform all citizen facing services, which is to provide an improved experience for citizens, businesses, and users within the public sector. This is already happening in Zambia. The second point, full ministerial transformations, which will affect complete organizations to deliver policy objectives in a flexible way, improve citizen services across the channels, and improve efficiency. Services that run across ministries, departments must feel joined up. Point number three, internal government transformation, which might not directly change policy outcomes or citizen facing services, but which is vital if government is to collaborate better and to deliver digitally enabled change more effectively. This talk this talk to 8 NDF with regards to efficiency gains and monitoring. To carry out these activities in a robust and coherent way, a CTO and a CIO CIO are essential to coordinate the technology, tools, processes, and information definitions that flow across all digital service provisions. Mr. Bimbe, welcome back once again. As I said, our guest is Mr. Nelson Bimbe. We expected somebody from one of the government agencies or government departments to join us, but unfortunately, uh, maybe they will join us later. But we'll still go ahead. Mr. Bimbe, the first question: can you briefly describe the roles of the Chief Technology Officer, who is the CTO, and the Chief Information Officer, who is the CIO, in general and in the public sector, And do you have examples where these roles have been used in government before? Over to you.
Thank you very much, Patrick. This is just to set it up, the discussion. I'll try to just elaborate this type of roles. I know they are a little bit confusing. However, as businesses, everyone now calls themselves, they need to be a digital organization, which means they've got to use digital across all their, offering in terms of services, products, even if that's internal transformation within that. So it's been realized within the private sector that a chief information officer and a chief technology officer as roles are important. So these are there. They are mostly interchangeable, but however, they are actually distinct. They've got a distinct role, and they are complementary. So for an organization to really kickstart a digital transformation and to do the business as usual operations, i.e. making sure digital is used across all the channels, the products, the operations, they need to have these complementary role. So in short, a chief information officer actually role is inward looking. So what we mean there is, as inward looking, we are looking at ways, they normally look at ways of how to trim costs on IT infrastructure while ensuring compliance and boosting productivity. So in essence, they are more looking at operational stuff as well as interoperability within those operations. So these are services, i.e. what you just described, citizen-facing services, but also there has to be internal systems that talk to each other, then systems that talk to businesses and that kind of thing. While the CTO, which is a chief technology officer, it's a role that is actually outward looking. So for that, it tends to be, looking at ways or looking at new technologies, that can grow business opportunities. So you're looking at what's going on in the space. What technology can you harness? What is the future technology that you can put in place to solve some of those problems that an organization is facing? So those can improve efficiencies, of course, can also create new revenue streams. But at the end of the day, within the public sector, the goal is to enhance the way citizens interact with the government agencies. They want to pay their taxes. They want to do this. They want to apply for a passport. And it's all that. Then there are other services that can grow out of that, where probably government can, as well as generate revenue through provision of those data sets. It depends how you define or how you want to do that, but that's possible. You find a way of doing that. So that in essence, that's what we are looking for as the differences and why these two roles are important.
Thank you so
So
much,
if
Mr.
we were to give an example, let's say,
and that's the question I wanted to ask you. Can you
yeah.
give a scenario showing where these
So
roles come into play?
If we look at in the public sector, if we look at governments, we can look at the best in providing an e-government ecosystem, which is Estonia. So they have these roles baked into their system. But the one that I'll talk about is more of the US. In the US, these roles are defined. So there is a chief technology officer who's basically based at the White House. So they tend to look at the future, the outside, look at what is it that we need to do in terms of the technology space that we need to be able to make the US, as we call it, the best of the best. But they've also got another, which is a distinct office, which is called the Federal Chief Information Officer. And this, as I said earlier, they tend to be inward looking. So they look at applications within the government, how they talk to each other, how they're designed, all those kind of protocols, interoperability protocol, but also user experience. And then you got to worry about the security, how data is secured, and just availability of those systems. So this is crucial. In the UK, they have a similar arrangement as well. So when we look at Zambia, we've got, of course, Smart Zambia, which have tried to squeeze these two roles into one. And I'm not privy, and I don't know how it's working right now, but of course, as we've alluded to, there are services that are being created. However, we feel, in my personal view, I feel those are more like silos. They are created without probably into integrating them at the back end. So I've looked at the Smart Zambia website, for example. They produced a number of documents in terms of the roadmap and the policies around that. However, some of these documents are actually stale because they have never been updated. If we look at the roadmap, it just goes up to 2017, which is the 7th National Development Plan. We are in 2023. There isn't any update to that document. Some of the documents are not accessible, basically. So it's kind of difficult to deduce where we are from what we plan, because if we look at those documents, they are more aspirational in nature. But how is the implementation going? Has it been implemented? There isn't any clue of really what's going on. While we applaud a lot of citizen-facing operations have been created, i.e., people can do their taxes online, they can apply for, RATSA is online, but there isn't, again, a cohesion behind the scene. Which we might look at some of the scenarios that will come across. So I would have loved to see, based on what was created as the future in 2017, being updated to look at what is it that is currently obtaining and marrying that to the 8th National Development Plans. Because in that 8th National Development Plan, there is the idea of a way of having management information system, i.e. dashboards, to see how policy is being implemented, where the bottlenecks are. So that is not very, very, very clear in that. There are also mentions of policies that need to be added, that to be created. Again, it's not clear where we are on that. Then the second bit, which we've alluded to, while these services are online, quite all right, I feel there isn't that insight on usage. We don't know about that. Again, we don't know what metrics were created, but I would love to have those metrics available. For example, we would, it would be nice to know what was the motivation, how many active, say, daily active users or monthly active users, for argument's sake. And also, what was it that we were trying to achieve by, i.e., maybe shifting a lot of, walk-in operations, that's manual operations, into digital? So what was the threshold? When were we going to say, now we've reached that? So those metrics are not very clear. The other thing is, while these services have been created, one doesn't know, you can't see anything to do with what those functionality are, how they come together. So a fact sheet of those services being available, including what are those criteria that they followed, in information management, security, and just the data protection thing. So it's not clear. So yeah, I can understand maybe things are happening, but for God's sake, that information should be available on the Smart Zambia website.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bimbe. And we've been joined by our sister, Jacqueline Shimba. Jacqueline, good evening. Good evening, Jacqueline. Yeah, we can't get Jacqueline for now. Mr. Bimbe, you still there? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, okay. Let's move forward. You've talked about the number of systems. Let's just talk about um, one scenario, because you're saying yes, there are systems that are there. You can go, and I was in Zambia. I was able to do Pakra online. I was able to get my TPIN number, which is a tax number, online. Yeah, but you mentioned that these systems are not talking to each other. The best example is uh, when students were applying for the job, when applicants were applying for the jobs the government advertised. They had to go to ECZ, have their certificates authenticated by ECZ, by Examination Council of Zambia, and then another example is elections. Somebody has to go, member of parliament has to go and collect different documents, certified, and all that process. Don't you think? Do you think the job of the chief technology officer is to make sure that uh, those systems are talking to each other? All you need is to go to ECZ and take your ID, and they'll have it verified in the system. Can you just elaborate on the interconnectivity of those systems? What kind of efficiencies can they bring? Because as far as I know, some of those systems can even be revenue generating, instead
Mhm.
of just creating efficiencies. The government can even sell some of that data to organizations.
Mhm.
An example is here in the UK. If you want to buy a car, it's connected into the road traffic authority. You can know if that car was involved in an accident, who owned that car, all that information. Can you just elaborate on that? The importance of that connectivity of all those separate systems coming together.
That's a very good question. I think it helps us to illustrate why. Sorry about that. So it might help us to illustrate why we think these roles are important, and they've got to exist as a complementary tool set. So uh, just to elaborate further, so you've got to have in a situation like Zambia, maybe because we are not a corporation or a company, so there ought to be some sort of these roles provides the glue in a way. So you have a situation where these are providing the good practice. They are the ownership of the high level data model, so to speak. And talking about security. So you have a situation where if a department of a quasi-government organization is procuring certain systems, they need to follow a certain laid down process, as well as those systems need to have certain interoperability baked in. And then that information flows need to be defined. So that's the ownership part of it. So these roles are not really implementation type. I know Smart Zambia have put all those things together. However, when you look at Smart Zambia, it's also an implementing organization. So lifting these outside, then they become overseers and the owners of the data model and all the good practice that goes within it. So let's take, for example, which something bugs me a lot is every election cycle, you have people running around to verify their grade 12 certificate, for example. So before they present their documents to the electoral officer, they've got to go to the examination council to verify that, right? That information is there, it's in the system. Then they've got to, again, verify their identity, who they are. That information is there already in the computer system. They could also be verifying their tax compliance, which is, again, is there. So you have a situation where people have to move with pieces of paper being stamped all around. How about if you are defining a proper interoperability protocols around those systems? The ECZ system, which is Election Council of Zambia, you could just present your details. Behind the scene, those verification can happen because identity provision, identity management can be run from the Ministry of Home Affairs because they know who is born, when they were born, when they died. All that identity kind of information is there. The tax provides information about tax compliance. There is self-assessment. So pay as you earn, all that is available there. Then you've got, of course, the correction services. They can tell you whether somebody has, served a sentence, for example, and the police databases can say, or the courts they have information on who is in court or whatever. So all that can happen seamlessly. So now if you extrapolate that to, say, lands, and other issues, you've got people traveling, spending days to just carry out a transaction, right? So that by them doing that, you're wasting their time, they are spending money, they're affecting their productivity as well. So having that kind of cohesion within the systems, rather than creating them as silos, these things need to be baked in. So those are the kind of things that I can understand probably they are happening. I've tried to look at the interoperability document. Unfortunately, it's not accessible. Most of the documents on Smart Zambia are not accessible anyway, which is, again, telling for an organization that is smart, where documents are not accessible. So that is a worry to me as probably a researcher, and an interested party looking at this kind of thing. So those are the kind of scenarios that you can go further. Government all over the world, they sit on rich data, rich information. That information can be liberated, digitalized. When we talk about digitized and digitalization, can help government create a revenue stream. It can also allow our young people who are technology savvy to create services or application or businesses on top of that data. That is key. That's how a lot of governments have managed to do that. You talk about the US, the UK, Estonia is one of the good examples. So I would want to believe that's the direction this government is taking and Smart Zambia is taking. But I still think those two roles are still important. There could be arguments of what about the role of the coordinator of Smart Zambia? That can be resolved, provided, if the key mandate, I've seen the mandate of Smart Zambia, it's aspirational, as I said earlier. But what we don't know is whether those aspirations are being met, because there isn't any information on the website to say that. So when assuming these roles are being created, they could sit within Smart Zambia. The Smart Zambia coordinator could take on that role and delegate. That's another option. But there ought to be that clarity between the external looking and the internal looking.
That's fantastic, Mr. Bimbe. Yeah, it would have been nice if somebody from Smart Zambia came, and yeah, and then we had Jacqueline. We just lost her. Yeah. So you've explained that role won't be a duplication with um, Smart Zambia, and then the other question I would want to ask you is, okay, I think we've got Jacqueline coming back.
Okay.
Jacqueline, welcome back. It looks like there's internet issues here. Can you
Yeah,
hear me?
yes, I can hear you. Good evening.
Good evening.
And good evening, Mr. Bimbe.
Good evening, Jacqueline.
Yes.
Nice to meet
I think
you.
it's actually me. I have so many calls coming in, I think because of some assignment.
Oh,
So
shame. Yeah.
yeah, I'll probably be
So
disturbed.
far, if you listen to what Mr. Bimbo was saying, have you got any question? Have you got any comment or any
Oh,
questions to Mr. Bimbe?
I listened very briefly for just about 3 to 4 minutes, and then I went on a call. However, what I wanted to say was, I think it would be good for Mr. Bimbe and Smart Zambia team to speak, as in one-on-one. I was hoping some of them would be on the show today, or tonight rather, so that they also give an update of where they are. Because I know that there are so many things that they're actually implementing, a number of activities, especially in the ministries. And then some of these electronic frauds that are happening in some of these ministries have come out because of Smart Zambia being able to look through how transactions were happening and eventually being able to trace where there were anomalies. Yes. So I don't quite understand what you would want to see, Mr. Bimbe. What is your advice to Smart Zambia? What exactly is it that you would like them to upscale on? Thank you.
Before Mr. Bimbe come in, thank you so much, Jacqueline. Mr. Bimbe, I think you explained. Jacqueline must have missed something. Uh, can you just go back and explain what you think the role of the chief technology officer and the role of the chief information officer, and also just give some scenarios, because Jacqueline, what Mr. Bimbo was saying is, with the fact that he went on the website, there isn't much on that website. Things might be happening, in ministries, and I was in Zambia, I could do things electronically. But the point Mr. Bimbe is saying, are these systems talking to each other? Then two, we still, going to ECZ, or when somebody's applying for a job, they have to go to Examination Council of Zambia, have everything verified, and yet all those systems interlinked, they can be talking to each other. Over to you, Mr. Bimbe. Can you just explain to Jacqueline? Maybe she missed what we were talking about.
Thank you very much, Jacqueline, for highlighting that, and thank you very much for the offer. We are patriots, so we are happy to engage and share notes and there's a lot we can learn. I, for one, wants to learn, and other people can learn also from our experience and seeing things. It's nice to hear that things are happening at Smart Zambia, which we are not privy to. The reason that we are not privy to is because there isn't much transparency, and a lot of information is not provided, even on the website. When we look at the website of Smart Zambia, it's got some information, but most information is actually stale. For example, the roadmap is actually old. It goes up to 2017, which is the 7th National Development Plan. It hasn't been updated. And at the same time, most of those documents are aspirational. So there isn't a way to show whether we are moving in the right direction in terms of what was proposed, so to speak. And the other thing that is missing is while online services have been, citizen-facing online services have been created, there isn't a sense of how effective they are in terms of numbers. For example, how many daily active users we have, how many transactions are we moving from manual, where people walking, to using online, and what are the targets? It isn't there. So that's where we are coming from on that one. In terms of the roles of the CTO and the CIO, these roles are coming out of the private sector, which have identified that they are senior roles, they are strategic roles. For an organization that wants to claim it's becoming a digital organization, needs to have those roles at board level. So they are complementary roles. There are arguments as to whether they are needed. Within literature and within practice, they are actually recommended. So the CIO normally looks at it's an inward-looking role. So it looks at what is available, how to drive efficiencies in terms of deploying digital technologies and systems. So this is where they become the owners of the data model, the large data model, and define those protocols that the technology should work and talk to each other. On Smart Zambia, there is an interoperability document. Unfortunately, it's not accessible. I don't know why. As for the CTO, this role is outward looking. So it's there scanning the horizon to see what technologies are being created out there, are being used out there, that can be introduced to can be leveraged to meet those aspirations. I'm happy to note that Zambia have signed an MOU in Abu Dhabi to look at how big data and how to manage, how to use artificial intelligence based on that. So that's an outward looking kind of thing, but there are a lot more. So that's why these roles, sometimes they are there because they complement. The other one is more about, what is out there? How can we take advantage of that? The other one is okay, it's business as usual. How do we manage these systems? So in terms of Zambia, like we've got Smart Zambia. It is okay to have those roles within Smart Zambia. That's okay, provided they are very clearly defined that this is what it is that needs to be done in terms of creating those synergies and cohesion, so that whenever a system is being procured, for example, in agriculture, in whatever ministry of department, it adheres to certain interoperability capabilities, as well as security, as well as information flows that are needed at the basic level. Because at the end of the day, if you look at the 8th National Development Plan, there is the idea of having the dashboard within the policy delivery units, which if it's there or something similar, where you can have dashboards to see how policy is being implemented, whether we are hitting the milestones, we are getting there. Now, how do you hoover that data in a more coherent, in a more real-time kind of sense if those systems are incapable of actually exposing some of those key elements of the data? So that's what we talked about, basically. So given a scenario, we looked at what happens during an election cycle. So a prospective candidate goes to elections, Council of Zambia, and say, I want to be a candidate for this. Of course, there are criteria. And one of them is, of course, you've got to say who you are, and that's the identity kind of bit. There is the qualification, whether you have a grade 12, whether you are not, you don't have a criminal background, your tax is in place. Now, when you look at all that, these systems already exist. They've got, but they've been created as silos. So the national registration, which is under the Home Office or internal security, they've got the national registration card base and passport and all that. That can be an identity management system that can provide identity to any systems, and they can sell that identity management system to other people. Then you've got Examination Council of Zambia that verifies qualifications and others. They can provide that. You've got your tax, you've got your correction and services. So essentially, the Electoral Commission can have a system where you just put in your data when someone comes in, and behind the scene, all those kind of verification, who you are, do you have the qualifications as a grade 12? Are you tax compliant? You are not a criminal, you haven't spent time in jail, you've got no pending cases, within a minute, and be able to rectify. Then that avoids the whole idea of people running around, deadlines, using money, getting out of work 3-4 days, affecting productivity. So that's just an example. Now, when you take it even further, other organizations, other companies, say recruitment agencies, could use those systems to integrate with their recruitment processes automatically, and then government can earn revenue by exposing those APIs to those kind of organizations. So that's where I think having these roles nicely defined, coherent, can provide that direction and that platform to build on top of.
That was fantastic, Mr. Bimbe. Jacqueline, are you still there?
Yes, I'm actually here, and I must say that
Any comment or
yes,
questions? Please go ahead.
First,
Jacqueline.
before I even ask the question, I must say that I cannot agree more with Mr. Bimbe. We really do need integrated systems in this country, electronic systems that, like you've said, allow people to either gather information or they can be vetted very easily. And with this fight against corruption, if everything is electronic, you easily fight corruption. I'm just coming back from a country where they've gone 10 steps, 100 steps ahead with artificial intelligence, AI, on so many fronts, even when it comes to even just delivering lessons, lectures at a university. There's a lot of artificial intelligence being used even in the research work. You're very correct. I would like to know then how you perhaps foresee a situation in the future of how to get Smart Zambia to the table. or the government as a whole, I know Smart Zambia's government, to now discuss those two important roles that you're talking about, so that one or the other, they're integrated in the system. And perhaps to find out, are there people inside Smart Zambia that are performing, seemingly those kinds of roles, but it has not come out transparently, like you were saying?
Have they been properly defined?
Yes, so that, people are aware. That's one. How do we get now round to ensure that that happens? Then number two, I think that from what you've said and, what you would like to see, which I totally agree with you. We have very cardinal ministry in this country, the Ministry of Health, where the systems need to start applying. If I pay for insurance, I don't need to suffer when I go to a pharmacy or a chemist. I don't need to be asked questions at any clinic. All I need to do is present, whether it's my national registration card or if it's my NEMA card for insurance, health insurance, and I should be attended to immediately. Again, what lessons can we pick from your experience, your exposure around how now we also integrate that whole system in the Ministry of Health? But I'm so with you, even when I look at service delivery from local councils. I mean, right now, personally, I feel very shortchanged by our local councils because garbage is not collected. The city is filthy, it's appalling. You want to say certain things and you cannot because people will see you or view you a certain way. But all you are trying to put across is the fact that, look, this is not what we bargained for. And if leaders are not performing, local authorities not performing, we should have a system of recalling these people and getting people that can perform. Do they have a system where they are praised? Is there somebody with an M&E system that can be implemented in those councils to see whether they're really delivering or not? And if their delivery percentage is below 40, 20%, they don't need to sit in those offices. But I am talking about a system that allows the council to know that Jacqueline lives at house number this and that. Her garbage collection is supposed to be every Tuesday at 10 a.m. and it's collected by this company. And if they don't collect on that day, I can easily enter star hash something, and they'll know my garbage has not been collected. Such systems. And I'm bringing this up because I know there was some time last month in Livala where garbage was not collected in the whole area for 1 week. And nobody was saying anything about it. Nobody was, the council themselves, the whole team of the local authority didn't come up to say anything. If we have systems that are electronically integrated and people know that we can depend on these systems, and those in authority know they can be held accountable because these systems will speak and their numbers won't lie, I think then we'll really be developing. And thank you for this topic. Over to you, Mr. Bimbe. Thank you, Chilufya.
Thank you, Jacqueline. But Bimbe, before you come in, Jacqueline, uh, um, one of the before Bimbe comes in, one of the objectives of such systems, or one of the benefits of such systems, is that they create efficiency, which you have explained. They can be revenue generating. They can reduce corruption. You've just said some of the system, by Smart Zambia has reduced corruption. And then you also mentioned about management information systems, whereby dashboards can be created, information can be monitored if systems are in place. So it doesn't need. I'll just give an example. I'm not saying Madam Masebo is not doing a job. It doesn't need Madam Masebo to be moving from one clinic to another. If systems are interlinked, all she needs is a dashboard. All she needs, she can even see how many people, how many doctors are not going to work. How many doctors have entered into the into the hospital? How long did that doctor stayed in the hospital? When did that doctor logged into the system? So if systems are talking to each other, she doesn't need to be moving from one hospital uh, to another. But what Babimbe mentioned was there are systems there. But Jacqueline, I was in Zambia not long ago, and I had to go to Zambia specifically to open a bank account, which is really, really sad. Imagine paying that kind of money to go to Zambia, which can be done here in the UK, even in South Africa, even in Botswana, electronically. But then when I went to the bank, to that very big bank, they asked for so many information, and some of that information they could have taken it from Pakra. They asked me for a Pakra certificate. They asked me for Zambia Revenue tipping certificate. All that information, they could have gotten it because from the government system, they could have been interlinked into a government system, like Babimbe said. And the government can actually charge for that information. Imagine a government having a revenue. Government is sitting on data that can be a revenue generating information for the government, and it can also reduce corruption, because somebody can have a certified certificate grade 12, but who certified that? A human being. Why can't the bank or an organization go into the system and check it from the revenue authority or examination council of Zambia instead of an individual signing it? Over to you, Mr. Bimbe.
Thank you very much, Patrick, and thank you very much, Jacqueline, for the questions and some statement. So on the first one, how can Smart Zambia start thinking through some of these things? Yeah, I think I've got to lay it out. You know, it shouldn't be a big bang kind of deployment. Of course, we need to understand what is there already and try to work through picking the low-hanging fruit. But ideally, what is needed is to sit down and look at, define. We've got those roles, we can define them, fine. Then match them. Do we have them within Smart Zambia? If not, how do we enhance Smart Zambia to have those kind of roles? We do that. And then from there are these things which are already there in some of the documents that are Smart Zambia on what policies, what things needs to be created. But I wonder whether they were created. For example, say RATSA is creating or procuring a system. Have they gone through this checklist to say that has been defined, say from the CIO or CTO level, gone through that, so that once they are implemented, that data can be, usable by other system or by other people. So those are kind of the starting point to look at. So it's a question of sitting down and hammering out what is there, what is not there. The key thing actually for us who are in diaspora is the lack of information. We depend on what is published publicly. We are not privy to what is going on privately. So as I said, so we rely on what is already available on the public web. So therefore, Smart Zambia probably needs to update some of the information and enhance some of that information that is there. Because one of that role is evangelism, which is not there. So again, these services have been created, but do we know that people are really wanting to use them? What is stopping them from using them? Because it's going to save them money. So we need that advocacy, evangelism role to be embedded within all that systems that we create. So that's something that, again, can be looked at as people sit there. In terms of lessons on interoperability, nowadays, most systems are running off the cloud. They are not mostly internal. And we know there are a lot of cloud systems out there. So even systems in Zambia can be transformed into those kind of clouds, like, a platform as a service where, maybe Ministry of Lands could open up their data through some sort of an API where lawyers who do conveyancing and the councils can create services.
Sorry, sorry, Mr. Bimbe, to cut you. Mr. Chinyama from the Smart Zambia coordinator is trying to join. He's just sent in a message that he's failing to join in. But Chilufya, are you able to see him?
Are you able to see him? You are muted.
Have you sent him the link?
Yes, I sent him the link. Let me just ask him to try now because he sent a message saying I'm failing to join. Let me tell him now. Please proceed, Mr. Bimbe.
Yeah.
Continue, Mr. Bimbe.
Thank you.
So in terms of, so interoperability should always be baked into systems that we have created, because nowadays that's how systems are created. If you look at, say, for example, in the UK, when it comes to addresses where mapping is concerned, logistics companies, they use Royal Mail because they own the database of all the addresses in the UK. So anyone who creates an Uber-like system, they overlay it on a map, which might be Google Map, but they need to calculate the distances. They use that addressing system and they earn revenue out of that. So those are the kind of things that also, as you design this system, interoperability should be baked into them. Because as I said earlier, governments sit on a lot of quality, a lot of data. No other organization has that data, but we need to digitize it to make it available. So even if we've gone through getting this MOU to do AI depends on training. It depends on how much digital data you have within your system so that it can learn. When you're talking about fraud detection, it requires a lot of information. So putting that information digitally online helps as well, So that is where, again, interoperability is just having those rules that whenever you are getting a system, these are the key areas that your system should have. So you're looking at much a higher level other than the operational system that they are creating to manage their whatever they are offering. But as a management information system level, you are saying we also need that. But if you can also allow interfaces to other people to reuse to get that data, then that will help create that ecosystem. Because there are a lot of smart young Zambians that have got IT skills that could really create amazing apps that could help, in service delivery. That is coming down to the local authority part of it. Smart guys can create those apps where one can report where the street light is not on, it's not fixed, garbage is not collected, and put it. But then there ought to be also some service level agreement. I know, like in the UK, they've got a service charter, a citizens charter. What is it? Because they're not income generating entities. So they've got to say, these are the things that we can provide you. These are the metrics we need. We'll fix this thing at such a time when you report. So you use those as metrics. Then that can be used as a scoring system or a review system. That comes probably your KPI kind of thing, where you can say, how many people reported that their garbage wasn't collected? How long did it take for the council to respond? That becomes your metrics because it's measured against what charter or what agreement they've gone with the citizen and say, for this is what we'll do. For this is the time scale that we'll do. For that, this is. So all that creates that transparency, and two, it creates those efficiencies and expectation for citizens. They can plan their day. They know that if I do this within such a time, I'll get a response. So that's one way that can be looked at, as well as digital. Once it's implemented, it always leaves a trail. So you are reducing that opportunities for corruption, as you say. While you can implement real-time detection within the system, like IFMIS, for example, Whereas, if say a large sum of money is being moved from one account to another, some sort of notification can be triggered to someone else to say, well, this is happening. Can you look at that? You click that, you see the details. Oh, they are paying for this contract. You click that, you get all the information about that contract. You get everything there. So those kind of linkages can be created as you design kind of those systems in that way. So that's probably I can say on that one. And besides, one of the key, as I said earlier, in the 8th National Development Plan, it is the dashboards, which could be very, very helpful, because at the end of the day, as a government, we need to know where we are going, but we also need to know whether we are going in the right direction. Those are the kind of dashboard KPIs that, you guys within government can see. We said we are going to employ so many teachers. How many have we employed? We said we are going to fix these roads. How many kilometers of roads have we fixed? So you can have real-time or near real-time information at that time and create intervention very quickly. This also avoids the whole thing of being reactive, because the information will be there available, and some of this can be available to the citizens. So, like for me, if I want to see, what's happening with this, I can just go there and find that information, because these systems can generate that information that will also be used by the public to see how government is performing. So that probably what I can say for now on that. I hope that answers some of the questions that you raised, Jacqueline.
Yes, what you've said actually does. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you, Jacqueline. I'm trying to send a link directly to Mr. Chinyama. But in the meantime, Mr. Bimbe, we can continue. Mr. Bimbe, you've talked about the roles of the CTI, the CIO, and obviously these roles should be working. If maybe they currently sit in Smart Zambia, but my question is, who is in terms of freedom of information, which is the law coming into which might come into Zambia, and data protection laws. How what role does this? Who is responsible for that, and what how who responsible for this? Is it the CIO or the CTI or chief technology officer?
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, as as we move towards digital, governments collects a lot of information on people, on what their activities. So care on how that information is used, what it can be used for, comes into question. There are examples of the GDPRs in Europe and others. And I know in Zambia there is I think something similar to that, which is in effect. So every system obviously has to take into account data protection in terms of how they manage their data. So the CIO could define those based on what the Act says and say, hey, you are collecting this data, this is what you need to do. There are those concepts of having a data controller. Then you have to say, whenever somebody signs in or uses a system, you need to tell them why you are collecting that information, what you are keeping, how long you are going to keep it for, and what purpose you are going to use it for, and that to be sensitive. And then when probably the access to information bill comes, organization will have that information ready to answer those questions. Of course, there will be certain things that cannot be given. For example, the information that pertains to national security or can have a detrimental effect on other people, there will be, of course, maybe courts getting involved. So, but as long as that information is well kept, well curated, well managed, and that's the role of the CIO to define those processes, that should be okay, I think, to work. I'm happy that legislation is in place in terms of data protection in Zambia and privacy. And also there is also Computer Misuse Act, which looks at the cyber aspect, cyber security and hacking, that kind of thing. So that's good. Of course, it has to go further than that. There is a cybersecurity center in Zambia, which I believe helps with working with other cybersecurity organizations around the world to detect bad actors and be able to inform those people that manage the systems to protect themselves. So yeah, I think on those areas we are good, I suspect. But it's a question of, how are we working together? Are people really, those owning those systems, be able to follow those criteria? So some of these things, like in some organization, we follow certain standards, like an ISO standard, for example, on information security. So organizations, probably like government, may be something that they could aspire to, because that gives you a framework of how you can make sure your information management is up to standard. And you have to remember that also you are not an island. You are dealing with other countries. You are dealing with other entities. So you need to be able to confidently say, yes, we follow good practice. We are ISO compliant or ISO certified, for example.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bimbe. That was fantastic. Last but not the least, assuming these roles are created, or they are there, where do you think they should sit, and why? If I take you back to our show on the 2nd of January 2023, when we hosted Mr. Martin Kalungo Banda, we touched on the need for a policy delivery unit. Do you think this could be part of such a unit? Over to you, Mr. Bimbe.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think looking at their current arrangement, Smart Zambia actually is under the Office of the President. It used to be under Cabinet Office, which I thought that time wasn't really a good idea, because its mandate is so cross-cutting that, being in a kind of, I think at beginning it used to be under finance and then moved around. So being at the presidential office, I think, gives it much more power and much more kind of, I don't want to use force or something, much more, authority, so to speak, to kind of help shepherd this kind of digital transformation projects that are going on around various government departments. So I would think since Smart Zambia exists and we've got a coordinator within Smart Zambia, but then, as I say, it could be relooked at what are those functions. Could the coordinator become the overseer and then have a bit of some of these roles delegated to other people within that organization? That's also possible, instead of having two roles. How you create them, that's a matter for, obviously, discussion on looking at the pros and cons of how to do it. But where they are now within the Office of the President, I think is key. I would also want to think within the presidential office, there is some sort of a policy delivery unit that, or an entity that looks at, here are the policies that we have. How is each ministry or department delivering on those policies? And what are those KPIs that we've given them, and what they've, what they are supposed to talk to? And then regular meetings just to look at, where the bottlenecks are. How do we resolve them? What are they doing about it? Is it resourcing? Is it skill sets requirement? Is it, tooling that is required? And you fix that. So that unit could coordinate with these roles to create those dashboards and to make sure that all the information at the management level is filtering through automatically. Because the problem with some of these things, you can have a management information system where you send out emails or sheets and say, can we have returns on this? They'll send you those, but they are subject to manipulation. People can send you fake stuff. But within a generated system, there is always redundancy. You can get this information, but you can still get the same information from another system. So you have kind of that verification process. But the key is this information, if is provided in near real time or real time if possible, you have a situation where you can be more proactive as a policy delivery unit or as a government, rather than being reactive, the after event, like what we are seeing when it comes to audits, and because it's also looking at the backwards, rather than prevention. So so that could be one way of looking at it. So yes, it should be at that level, and it could be jailed within that policy delivery entity if it's there, or whatever it looks like. I don't know much about that anyway. Whether there is such a thing, or if there is, then that could be the place they could work together.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bimbe. That was fantastic. We've been trying to get hold of
Can I just respond to the question from Roy?
Yeah, that's what I wanted to ask you. If you can respond to that.
Yes, there is a myth when we talk of technology. We tend to think it's always digital, it's always ICT. There could be manual technologies as well. So when we talk technology, we are talking of anything that improves the way we do things, that improves, the way we deliver services to the people. I think that to me is innovation. It can be manual, it can be a process, it can be a tool, it can be anything. So we are not just talking about ICT, it can be anything. That's just to answer that question. So innovation is anything that improves the quality of life for our people in terms of how we deliver service, how they experience that interaction with the service delivery entity.
Jacqueline, any comment, any question so far? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, I think that everything is clear right now. Probably except to just encourage Mr. Bimbe that it would be good to reach out to Smart Zambia, especially with all these proposals around how we can enhance and strengthen the use of digital systems and integrating systems, like we've said, ensuring that they're linked in a multi-sectoral way. And if people are looking for information, it's easy. If you punch in my social security number, which most people probably say my NAPSA number, they should be able to just get all the information about me, regardless. Yeah. Thank you.
And that's also one good point you've raised, because normally when we take one use case or one task that a citizen or a business might want, they deal with different entities within government. So these systems are cross-cutting in terms of how you finalize that transaction. So like we've looked at the registration to to take part in an election, what sort of entities are involved. This then brings to the point of how do you then create a system that looks like a whole that can survive the changes in governmental structures and focus. So that is very, very important. So currently in Zambia, each ministry has got, for example, a website, whatever, with that URL and whatever. What if tomorrow the president decides we don't need that ministry, instead we need that ministry? What happens to those systems? So that is something that really needs to be looked at, because whatever digital transformation you're doing has to be cross-cutting and has to outlive those structures, imposed structures of having Ministry of Health, Ministry of Education, and because in the future we might not need a Ministry of Education. It could be something else, but those systems should outlive that. So we need to also be thinking how we provide and we create those systems that can really stand the test of time in terms of these changes within government structures. So, for example, in the UK or in the US, they've got a .gov kind of link that every entity uses that, even the design. When you are on the tax office system, you might think you're actually on the home office system because it's all simply designed, it's all looking the same. You only need one address. You find everything. So you don't need to say, oh, I need mof.co.zm. Even embassies today, Zambians foreign mission, they've got all funny URLs that don't reflect that it's a government entity. So I think there is a need to start looking at harmonizing all that so that you have a single entry point, a single look and feel for everything, a very powerful search within that system, and then that system or whatever presence, it has to be both informational, which means I can, oh, how do I get this? Oh, here's the forms. And it can also be transactional. I want to pay for this. Here's how you do it. There are the forms you go through. So to a user, you are dealing with a single entity. But behind the scene, these systems, there's different systems talking to each other to satisfy that request. So that is something that probably Smart Zambia could be looking at as well, because it's just not good to, you have this URL, you want to do your tax. You have this, you want to do your national registration. You have that to go to the local authority, for example. So that could be helpful as well.
Fantastic, Mr. Bimbe. You one step ahead. I wanted to ask you about the one-stop portal. You've just answered that question. So, Mr. Bimbe, fantastic. So you say if these systems are talking to each other, there can be a lot of benefits, to the government, to the public, and so, Mr. Bimbe, also there can be also savings for the future, for now and for the future. An example. So Mabimbe, would that be? I've got a question. So once we've got the CTO and the CIO sitting there, so which means whenever a government ministry wants to purchase an equipment or something or a system, Smart Zambia needs to do a due diligence on that system to make sure that it's compatible, so that when they want to interlink the systems, there won't be any problem. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, yes, that's exactly what I mean. But however, how you implement that compliance system could be different. It could be a question of having a form or a system somewhere which keeps all these criteria. And whenever somebody is procuring a system, they need to go through and say, yes, all these ticks. And then they've got to prove that it's true that those things are there. So then Smart Zambia could create some sort of stubs to test whatever system is being created to make sure that it complies with those kind of can we draw information easily for our own MIS to manage efficiencies and checking how things are going? B, can other people be able to consume and interact with that system? But the core of that system is to provide something. Say, for example, FISIP is to provide, identifying beneficiaries, moving fertilizer around, who is paying, who is not paying, who qualifies. That's a different matter. But also then it needs to be able to provide. So for people within the policy delivery could be able to say, how many people qualified? How many people do you deliver? How long did it take to deliver? So that can be matched against whatever metrics that you've set for that organization. So that information then could be flowing around. So yes, that's what I meant. But the way you implement it has to be smart. You don't want people, sending forms, going there, checking. That could be, again, another bottleneck, which you don't want, because at the end of the day, you want to lead an agile kind of system that is very quick, very responsive, and also value for money in terms of cost.
And then, Mr. Bimbe, before we finish, you're saying government sits on a lot of data, and that some of that data can be revenue stream for governments or government departments. The case of RATSA. Don't you think RATSA, if they are to digitize all that information and all those systems are interlinked, they are sitting on one stop place, gov.zm, how can the business and the people benefit on RATSA, having all that data and it's in one place?
Yeah.
An example.
So an example with RATSA, of course, RATSA's mandate is to make sure all our, transportation and roads are safe, basically. That's the key. So how do we manage that? So you have people bringing in vehicles. Vehicles need to be road tested. The owners of those vehicles, the people that are responsible for moving those vehicles, i.e. drivers, needs to be registered. They need to be a driving license. Then you've got the insurance aspect of that. So that information, I'm pretty sure, is there. But that information could be complemented. For example, you could say every garage that repairs a vehicle, they need to record that information onto their RATSA system. Every road accident that has been involved with that car has to be recorded. The police has to record that system. So if me, a normal motor, wants to buy that vehicle, I should just be able to enter the reg number, and I should know whether A, that vehicle has been involved in an accident, has been repaired before, is roadworthy. So all that then creates an environment where whatever vehicles are currently on the road, people are buying, are safe. The other thing is also the insurance companies could also link up to all those systems. They could be linked with the insurance system. If the police officer, the road traffic guy, stops a car, of course, I've got a license. They say, show me your license. That's a paper. I can forge that license. But immediately I'm given that license, I've got a scanner or whatever, I can check that number, which can dial into the system, check, is the driver who they say they are qualified to drive? So that license is genuine. Is the car roadworthy? For example, they'll check that automatically. Is this insured? They can check within minutes because there's already that linkages. Has the car been repaired before? What was the repair like? So the garages could provide that information. So it's just a question of mandating what is it that you want to manage the road safety. And also within the roads itself, I mean, there are a lot of RTAs in Zambia. The police and the health system, they have information on where accidents are happening. And that information could also be provided and linked on a map or whatever. Then other people could be saying, okay, this is where the problems are. We got that data as the planning infrastructure, which plans the roads, where they can expand the roads, make it safer. They have the data. Everything you do is data-driven. It's not just led by politics or other gut feeling, but at least you've got evidence to say, this is what we are doing. This is based on this data because you have it. All right. So that could be one example how you could link up RATSA and expand and then reach that data set that they collect and then augment it with other complementary data sets that are available.
So in
so
essence,
car dealers can be hooking into those systems when they're selling cars.
So in essence, RATSA can sell that data to banks, to insurance companies, to car dealers.
Yeah.
And that will be a revenue for the government.
If someone wants to get a loan to buy a car, the bank can check whether that car exists. A, it's got an owner. B, it's roadworthy. It's got all the right documentation.
And here in the UK, if it was driven by a lady, if it's an individual, they want to buy cars that are driven by ladies. They are so popular.
Yeah. So there are quite a number of things. I mean,
and how many owners are driven that car? Because the more the owners, the less interest somebody will have in the car.
Yeah.
If it had one owner and a lady, somebody wants to buy that car quickly.
Yeah. So those are some of the things. I mean, there are low-lying fruits. For example, one of the things that I happen sometime where Zambia's got this infrastructure, bridges, so there used to be time when the Ministry of Works would send engineers to drive around the country to inspect the bridges. But when you think about it, those bridges are structural. They've got all these tensions, measurements, whatever. You could cheaply get sensors to add to those bridges so that they become smart and they can send a distress call when they are in trouble. And then the road can be, the barrier can be closed automatically so that people don't fall over if the bridge is in distress. That way, then you can send someone to go and have a look at it. So as government, you are saving money rather than sending people on an errand to just go and look at these structures when actually they're okay. So there are a lot of wins that can be done using digital if we just think through what are those that can help us deliver those services cheaply and cost efficiently while improving that service delivery to the people.
Fantastic. Mukalevai, we want to see you. Welcome to TV Batwetu. And any question, any comment?
Well, my video, I'm actually it's a little bit dark here. That's why I couldn't. Yeah. Good evening, Jacqueline, and good evening, Bimbe.
Good evening.
And Chilufya. It's good to see you. Jack, how are you?
Yeah. I'm fine, thank you.
Yes. No, we can see that you are doing well. The government in power, Mole Womba, and you guys have said a lot of things here, and it's very interesting. But the only thing I want to stress is your points are very valid, and if we could only have people like you with this kind of knowledge back home and help the government, we shouldn't just let the government do everything to themselves. We can offer our services when we know our capability, our capacity. I know that for the government to give you a job to bring you back from UK to Zambia, it may cost them. That's why that's why the government probably they're a little bit skeptical to bring you with such kind of knowledge. Can give you an example of what Chilufya during PF, where he was told to come and he had this wonderful idea to come and revamp the railway system and improve our railway line system. But you know what happened? How his dream was just shattered. And then today we hear he's the one who actually worked with Elon Musk to put those landing gears on the spacecraft. And you wonder, why are we letting this human resource as Zambians to other countries? So let us try and find a way in which we can contribute. I know that this fora, it's a wonderful way of disseminating information, trying to give awareness to our government. But it takes two to tango. The government cannot do it on their own with this kind of knowledge. You guys, you have, like Bimbe, have so much good ideas, especially when it comes to the IT system, how to the data, restoring of data. We are making comparisons from this Western world where we are, and we see, but Zambia, are we there yet? And if we are, why haven't we taken these challenges or these new ideas on board? We need people like you to step up. I know it is not going to be easy, but we Zambians, I know how wonderful and intelligent we are. We have so much to give to other countries, but we don't give this knowledge to our own motherland. We shall forever remain in poverty and in uncivilized, because most of you who are the intelligent, the intellectuals, our biggest brainers, you have been exported. You are in the diaspora. So we need people like you, come up with papers, go out there. You need money, ask. We can also donate even our kwetu here, but Zambia have the capacity. Go to Zambia, do something. Do something. That's what I can only say for now, that we have so much knowledge. We are good at pointing at our credentials, what we have done, and we have built so much issues in our mind. But when it comes to practice, awe mwandini katwisha batulowa ni banani ku Zambia. You can tell even from our president. Of course, he's a very result-oriented man. There are a lot of promises that he made, which people now are trying to hold him accountable for. But we know that Rome was not built in one day. He is on the right track, but he needs support. That's what I can say for now. We need to support our government in place. Otherwise, this topic, the discussion was very, very fruitful and very, very interesting. Very interesting. Mitumes.
Thank you,
Thank you very much, Mukelebai. I think we, I mean, such forums, what we have, and I'm happy we have our sister Jacqueline there. It's one way of how we can compare notes and share our experiences and see how we can harness, the knowledge that we all have for the better good of our country. So I agree. This is probably the beginning. We will have more of this kind of shows where we talk about this kind of thing. What is it that we've learned that we could share with our colleagues, and also our colleagues can share with us And then we compare those notes and say, because we have to agree that what fails most implementation is what they call copy and paste kind of thing. But if you take the Bill Gates way of doing, get and take it and, extend. So it's the question of contextualizing. So you get something from wherever you get it from, but it has to be contextual to your environment, your laws, your culture, your way of doing things. So that's the idea. So I believe this kind of discussions helps us to engage. It's just a pity Mr. Chinyama couldn't join us, but we hope one day we'll meet up and share some of these ideas and share some notes, learn what they're doing, and because we are normally, us in diaspora, we're talking from scanty information. We don't have that much. We only rely on what we hear or what we experience when we travel back home, and also what we can find on the public space. So having that inside us to also, give us that look at what they are doing, that to me is kind of fruitful. That could be one of our contributions.
Thank you, Mr. Bimbe. Mukelebai, that was fantastic. The reason why I started this program is one, educational, then two is to bring people mostly in the diaspora and in Zambia who've got the knowledge so that we can share notes with the government. In essence, is to influence policy, making and policy delivery. And if you know Mukeleba, Jacqueline, Mr. Bimbe, we fought hard to bring this government into power. And we're not going to see this government fail. So this is one small way of contributing to this government so that it survives. We cannot afford to have those criminals coming back in 2026. Then we're not going to have a country. So this is one way of contributing, and it would have been so fantastic if Mr. Chinyama was there. But we've got his number. We can bring him on another program because this is just a continuation of a lot of other programs on digital transformation. But Jacqueline, over to you. Any closing remarks? Any comments?
Thank you very much, Chilufya. Mr. Bimbe, thank you for the insights and a lot of education around digitalization or digital migration and all the systems, electronic systems that we need to see in the country being implemented so that information is aligned, if I may use that term. It's aligned and it cuts the red tape. I think we are all aware that the president this year actually declared that this 2023 is a year to actually just get rid of all the rigidities that are in the government system, in the private sector, in doing business. And obviously, one of the main factors that impede business is lack of digitalization at a level that would ensure that players in that particular industry harness information easily. It's integrated, it's aligned to different systems, and these systems are speaking to one another. You being an expert, like you put it very clearly. So I think that this topic is very important, and I would encourage my colleagues at Batwetu that perhaps we plan it again, whether for next week or after, and then we get in the team from Smart Zambia. I think if we talk to them much earlier, and then we have this discussion, if we want, we can take this discussion outside Batwetu and have this discussion, on a Zoom call, for instance, or Google Meets, Teams or so, and have this 1 hour where we interact with Mr. Chinyama and his team and we also receive feedback from them. And from that feedback, there will obviously be an exchange of notes. I'm willing to facilitate that for as long as I'm told when the team is ready, and Mr. Bimbe as well. I must emphasize too that we really need to move to an educational system, especially in our curriculum, that attaches great importance to AI, digitalization, technology innovations, where it's no longer for elite schools. It should cut across all the schools, whether public or private. And this should start at the lowest level, which is even entry level, which is grade 1. And for those that are running preschools, even in preschools, because the world is moving very fast around AI and technology as well. So could be a good discussion point when we interact with Smart Zambia, just to find out how they're able also to capacitate the Ministry of Education. Thank you again. And just to emphasize also that the president needs all our support, whether we like it or not. And supporting the president is not about singing a praise song. It's about coming up with the ideas that you've brought out tonight, the information that you're giving us. That is supporting the visionary leader that we have. And I think that the more we interact with the people currently in the government system, because you are sitting in countries that are moving at a very fast rate, and if this information is brought in, you never know, tomorrow it might be one of the consultants in Smart Zambia that is even helping to build these systems. So thank you so much. And I really pray that we can interact with Smart Zambia soon. Thank you.
Before Mr. Bimbe comes in, Jacqueline, I know you're a busy person. Thank you so much for coming. And, and thank you so much also for offering to to mediate between us and Smart Zambia. That is so important. That's so fantastic. And we're ready anytime. I've got Mr. Chinyama's number. Yeah, anytime. We can do it on Batwetu, we can do it outside. But again, you mentioned something very important: our education system on ICT. Jacqueline, my son is going into high school next year. He's only 10. He's 11. He's 11. Yeah, he's 11 this year in April. He started doing ICT when he was 5 years. And next year, when he's in high school, grade 7, high school is grade 7, he'll start learning how to code. So imagine a Zambian student in a Zambian government doing ICT from grade 1 or grade 2, and then in grade 7 or grade 8 start learning how to code. Imagine what will happen to Zambia. How many young Zambian people will be creating apps, making money? Over to you, Mr. Bimbe. Closing remarks.
Okay, thank you very much, Omkelewai, Patrick, Jacqueline. Thank you very much, and I really appreciate you taking your time to come and join us. It's been very great, and also I thank you for offering to create the linkages with Smart Zambia. It will be quite, very, very good to just, as we said, share notes. That's what we say, and understand what you're going through. Yes, embedding education, ICT in education is key, and how you implement it also. I mean, there are good practice. I'll give you an example. For example, when ICT became a thing, for example, in the UK, ICT was taught as a separate subject in primary school and secondary school. But what it ended up creating super users rather than creators. So now it's been shifted, because actually ICT is a crosscut. You can be doing history, but you're using ICT to do your research and that kind of thing. So it's that kind of thing. And then you have to develop those skills in coding, as Patrick said. However, creating that, you need also to have an enabling environment that provides not the jobs or the opportunities to do good. Because you don't want to go through what other countries went through in the beginning. For example, the now Soviet Union, where they had very smart people, but because the laws were so restrictive, what happened? We ended up having a lot of hackers from that because they need to use those skills. But if the environment allows, which we've already discussed, opening up these data sets, amount of data set, of course, connectivity is an issue that needs to be fixed, that will actually provide those young people, smart young people, with something to play with, and create value on top of that data, and be able to feed themselves and look after their families as well. So that will be key. Yes, we happy to kind of look at those kind of things on how that can be harnessed in a more positive way.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bimbe. Jacqueline, thank you so much. Womkelevai, thank you so much. Our viewers all over the world, wherever you're watching us, thank you so much. May the good Lord prosper that country. May the good Lord protect our visionary president. We've got a president who've got servant leadership qualities, and let's support him. And we'll always support him, just the way we supported him before he went into power, and we'll support him until his legacy is completed. Once again, thank you so much. Good night. May the good Lord bless our beloved Mother Zambia. Thank you. Bye for now.
Good night. Thank you.